You all know Kendra, Wall Street Journal bestselling author, speaker, was supposed to be a keynote at Summit, but instead is a keynote for us today. Fashionista, follow her for her fashion, mom to 2 kids, wife, just all around stellar, solid human being with such a skill for storytelling. Kendra, sometimes I look at your posts and I'm like, how? Well, that's why you do what you do, and you're going to teach us to do it a little bit better. So I'm going to mute myself and let you take over.
Julie, remind me, how much time do we have? Because I have all these bullet points that I want to talk about.
About 45, and that includes Q&A.
Okay, 30. All right, we're great. Yay. Oh, well, good. I'm so happy to be here. And Julie, do you remember we were actually supposed to be together in New York City today? I know. Isn't that crazy? And we're together anyway. So it all works out. I have to say I am a huge fan of Julie. Of course, raise your hand if you're a huge fan. Everyone can, right? It is. Hold on, I'm gonna change mine. I can change mine to gallery view. Okay, that's better. Yay! So now I can see all of you. Hi, everybody. I'm also a huge fan of Beachbody. I actually woke up this morning and took my Energize just like first, first thing. I didn't have any ambitions of working out. Today is supposed to be a rest day for me, but I took it anyway because I love it so much. And also, I have to say, and I'm sure you all know this, but Julie is so personally inspiring to me. She didn't know that I was going to say this, but I watch her every day. How many of you watch her every day? You watch her every day. And you see her so excitedly making her Energize in the morning and so positive about everything. And even on the days where you don't feel like you want to be that, or no, you don't feel like that, or you don't want to be that, that oozes in to your soul through the screen. And actually just earlier this week, no, it would have been last weekend. And I've been watching Julie's posts, and we've been doing a pretty good job in quarantine life of keeping a schedule for the kids. Who's homeschooling right now? Anyone else homeschooling? Right? Did you know that I got a promotion? I am now teaching 2nd and 3rd grade. I am not qualified to teach 2nd grade math. It is still, no, 2nd grade I'm okay. They're telling time and stuff. 3rd grade, too much for me. But it was last weekend, and I had watched watch Julie's story and her early morning wake ups. And I was like, I used to do that. Now, not so early. And it was many years ago that I woke up that early. But if any of you have been feeling I wish I had more time. Do any of you feel that way? I wish I had more time. I wish I had more time. You can literally buy time. Not even pay, and it's free. If you just set your alarm just 1 hour earlier. And I knew this, but watching Julie and her stories, that's what we decided to do. So we now set our alarms for 11 p.m. because we didn't used to go to bed that late, but now we don't get any break from our kids whatsoever. Have you felt this? We don't get any break from them. So we put them to bed, and then we're I just want as many minutes to just be an adult. This is what we do. Julie, we're going to do a little, this is more casual, right? This is what we do. When it's time for bedtime and the kids are kind of fighting it a little bit, we say, uh-oh, mama's about to turn into Kindra. Here it goes. And then I'm like, oh, Michael, I love you. I can't wait. And the kids go, and they scream and they run into their bedrooms. So that's right. But we just want that time. So 11 p.m. is maybe a little bit later than usual. It works. Trust me, it works. They're but I think it's good for the kids to know that, no, there is mama time and there is Kindra time, and I used to get Kindra time when you went to school. I don't get that. I used to get Kindra time when Josie came to babysit. I don't get that anymore. Now it's Kindra time. Go to bed or face the consequences. And the consequences aren't like iPads being taken away. It's just, you got to live with Kindra. And I don't know if you want to know that wild woman. So our bedtimes have gotten later, which meant our wake up times had gotten later. And we would wake up in the morning and the kids have to be on Zoom call, well, Google Meet call, whatever. So I just said, following Julie's lead, I'm like, okay, we're going to bed at 11 because that time is still important to us, but we're setting our alarms for 6. And we're putting the coffee in to start brewing at 5:45. And we're doing that. So we did it all week. And I felt like a different person. And I don't know that I would have had the strength and it was a slow drip, right? Like I've been watching Julie for years but like it just so happened that her story, last Friday, made a shift in my life. And so you already know that my expertise is storytelling. That's my entire life, and how storytelling leads to the bigger things that we seek in our lives that help us achieve this success, however we define success, and all the various facets of success. The fastest road to get to that is through the stories we tell, and I am so jealous right now. That was a lawnmower. And let me tell you, I grew up in Minnesota where my chore was to mow the lawn. And I want to get a part-time gig mowing the lawn in Central Park. That is the thing that I've missed the most. So whoever's lawnmower that was, you're on the lawnmower listening to this Zoom right now. And I am so jealous. But the power of your stories, and that's what I want to talk here today. And you see it all throughout this business. You see it in your leaders. And what I want to be able to empower you to do is use those stories for yourself. So depending on how long we've been together, some of this information is going to be review. Some of this information is going to be brand new. All of this information, I hope, is something you take from this Saturday morning. It's Saturday. It is Saturday. Yep, it's Saturday. from this Saturday morning, and use it to fuel the success that you're looking for. So we'll be talking about your stories in a variety of ways, why your stories matter now more than ever, how to be finding stories that are so relevant, what makes a great story, and a few other things in the process. And Julie, I also have a link so they can download a free ebook that kind of gives them a worksheet so they can work through those things. Should I put it in the chat?
You can. That's perfect. And we're doing a little giveaway at the end too. April Keever's keeping track of everyone who stays on till the end. And one of the pieces that I'm giving away will be a Stories That Stick.
Oh yay! Stories That Stick. Oh. But this is a free ebook too that has to do with. Oh, thank you for Julie has been like the biggest champion. She came to my book party. I mean, yeah, it's all okay. So let's start at the top, and where I really want to start is how much your stories matter right now. And before I go there, I want to talk to a few of you, because there are a few of you who have wondered if your stories matter, who have wondered if your story is big enough, who have wondered if anyone wants to hear your story. And those doubts are what has kept you from making the difference you can make. If story is the pathway to whatever success, whatever level of success, however you define success, if story is the pathway to that and you aren't stepping into your stories, you're not starting on that path. So let me start there, to the person who's questioned the value of their stories. And the reason I want to start there is because that's where I started. So I told my first story when I was 11. It was an assignment for 5th grade. I told the story to a room full of 3rd graders. And have you ever tried to get the attention of a room full of 3rd grade? I mean, 1 3rd grader at this point. Tough to get their attention, right? But guess what? A story will do it. And I saw in that moment that it took 3 sentences of a story to hold 3rd graders in the palm of my hand. However, I think it's important that I point out that the story I was telling was a fairy tale. It was a children's book, right? So I felt very confident telling that story because someone else had written it and they knew what they were doing. And that continued for me. I continued telling stories on the high school speech team. Yes, I was extremely popular, just like all of the speech and debate kids are. So do not second guess that. Just multiple dates for prom. They were lining up, all right? I do feel like there are some things that have been spared for those people that haven't been able to finish out their high school year. I continue to tell stories at storytelling festivals. But there's more to that story because each and every time I told a story, I was telling someone else's story. I was telling a fairy tale. I was animating a folk tale, stories that have been tested and proven over the course of years or centuries and beyond. And I would watch other storytellers because I was at these storytelling festivals. I would watch these other storytellers who were 20 to 30 to 40 years older than me, because I was in my late teens, early 20s when this all started, who came from a variety of cultural backgrounds and experienced all different kinds of strife and struggle and challenges and prejudices in their lives. And I grew up in a middle-class family in rural Minnesota with 2 parents who loved me. What good were my stories? They weren't big enough. They weren't challenging enough. They weren't tragic enough. Now, your situation is different, right? But my guess is you have seen other stories, whether it's on social media or even in the news, or whether it's within your fellow teams, whether they're stories of success, whether that's business success or health and fitness success. And you have thought your story isn't big enough to matter. And so you don't tell it because you're self-conscious of that. I get it. I was there. So one day I was at a storytelling conference. I know you probably haven't been to one of those. Don't worry, you go to the Beachbody Summits. That's all the event you need to go to. I was at a storytelling conference in Oklahoma City. I was 21 or 22 years old. And I know this because I'd gone out with some of the other storytellers and had a glass of wine. That's all it would take. And then there was this open mic night where anyone got to tell their story. And I had just enough wine, it took a very little amount, to have the courage to tell my story, which I'd never done. I'd never told my own story. And I stood up in front of this room, in front of the microphone, and I told this story. It was actually a series of short stories about the embarrassing and ridiculous things I've done and said to get a boy's attention. If you've been on, how many of you were on the call? Gosh, it would have been months ago where I told the story about spin class and the song, right? So that story hadn't even happened yet. This was many years before that, and I told this series of short stories. And they were simple stories. They were young love stories. And afterwards, and after all the other storytellers had told their stories, I was inundated with people. This is back when groups of people could approach you after some, okay? So I know we're all a little skittish about this now, but I promise you it was legal at the time. And what happened was I had people coming up to me laughing still. I had people coming up to me with tears in their eyes as they were remembering their own small stories of love mishaps. And keep in mind, small stories. But it was those small stories, those authentic stories, those everyday stories that people drew such great response from. And so here's the thing that I want you to remember, the thing I want you to carry with you is your stories, your everyday stories. I mean, how many of you have had a story happen during these 2 months, like a quarantine story happen? How many of you have had one happen where there was a moment where maybe it was great, maybe it was sad, maybe it was just this big? I had one happen. I actually took a picture, and I'm going to build the story around it. So look for it in my Instagram. Oh, wait, here, let me put, if you don't follow me, which I'm sure you do, but I'll put my Instagram in the chat, because I'm going to write this story. I don't know when. I'll write this story. Here, I put it in the chat. That's my Instagram. I don't know when, because I still have to kind of write it, so you get to see like a raw one in the works. But last night, just before like we were up, the kids had gone to bed because Kindra had come out, and that we found this little note card on the ground, and the note card said, I took a picture of it because it was written in my son's handwriting, because his is a little bit crazier than my daughter's, and there were 2 bullet points written on it. One said, for every exit, there is also an entrance. And the second bullet point said, every one of you is essential to the success of the team. This is the picture. So it's just this little note card that I found on the ground of something that my son, he was already in bed. I had no idea where that came from. It could have been from Minecraft. Was he Minecraft? I try to call it Mindcraft just so I feel better about him playing it, because our screen-free family, those standards have fallen off a cliff drastically, and I'm okay with it. But so here, okay, so there's just like a tiny moment, like there's a note card on the ground. I'll tell you what, I can post a picture of that note card, and I'm going to write the story of the things that I thought about when I read that every exit has an entrance. Like, how many of you feel like this is just one big long exit right now? And what hope does that bring to know it? So I started going super deep on all this. Come to find out, it was clues from a book that my mother is reading to them via FaceTime when we have to work, and we lock them in our closet so we can film, and she reads books to them for 2 hours at a time. Parent of the year over here. So that's right. So you can see even that, like right there, like the story that I created about what that note card meant, the story of where it actually came from, but the bigger story that is there for everyone. That story is a story that I can tell on Instagram, on Facebook, and people will relate to. So I know that was a long way of saying your stories, even the small ones, matter now more than ever. And the good news is you have them. And let me just talk for a minute about, Julie, that's okay, right? To talk about, because we are in a unique time for our stories. And Julie, you and I talked about this on a different Zoom event. I know you've talked to your team about it, but thinking it was probably a good review right here. Okay. So you may be thinking, there's a chance that you're thinking like, oh, these are weird times. Have any of you thought that? Like, I feel weird talking about my coaching business right now because I know that people are struggling. I don't want to come across right. Okay. So let's all say that it's easy to feel weird. Like you feel like every message that goes out has to be somehow about coronavirus, and that's all right. And how can you possibly try to fit Beachbody into it? And is that insensitive? So a few things I want to say about that. Number one, you're not alone. This isn't your issue that only you are facing. This isn't Beachbody's issue that only Beachbody is facing. We have a tendency to take this very personally. I remember a couple weeks ago, maybe some of you will remember this, and that guy with the sign kept posting like posters about stop posting your at-home workouts. And I know like Beachbody took it very personally. I took it personally for all of Beachbody. But do you know who else is posting at-home workouts? Every single SoulCycle instructor. And they don't even have bikes. Suddenly SoulCycle instructors are lifting weights and encouraging you to join along. Random person, like everybody is posting their at-home workouts. not just Beachbody coaches, but how many of you took that personally? Like you thought that was a message strike. It was like that could have been to like the local dance instructor or his sister-in-law. Like, but we have a tendency to take this personally, to think that it's our own problem. So to think that the fact that you're uncomfortable is you, to think that you're uncomfortable is Beachbody, to think that you're uncomfortable is a network marketing direct selling issue. This is a global discomfort. I live in New York City, so if you hear, I haven't heard a single ambulance go by the way, the whole time. And I had another call right before this, not a single ambulance, so that's good news. It also can be bad news because there's just no traffic, and so they don't have to turn on their sirens. So that's, in New York, I never realized how much I missed a honking horn. Like how much I would miss it. Like we always used to be like, get it together. You don't need to honk so much. And now we're like, can you just honk a little, please? So I live in New York City. I have several friends who are in the top echelons of marketing for like Fortune 20 companies. And they and their teams are scrambling, trying to figure out the appropriate messaging for right now, here, today. So if you think that this is your problem, Beachbody's problem, the industry's problem, it is not. This is normal across anyone who has any involvement in crafting messages, whether it's a big brand or a small brand. Okay, so keep that in mind if you've felt that way. Number two, you may be thinking like, I shouldn't share about the product. I shouldn't share about Beachbody because so many people are in economic demise right now. And I don't want them to think that they should be buying something, which, okay, so a few sides of this. There are always going to be people who can't or don't or won't prioritize your product in their financial scheme. That has not changed. Like that is a constant. Okay, so that hasn't changed. That's not new to the situation we're in right now. And that is not true for everyone. Don't let your story, maybe someone at your house has been furloughed. Maybe someone at your house, maybe you yourself, like this was a side gig and you've lost your standard job. Don't let your story, don't put that on other people, right? So for example, I'm in the events business. You're not going to Summit. I'm not speaking at Summit. What do you think that means for me? Like, I live in New York City. Arguably, like, it is the worst spot. I'm like, I said to Michael, I'm like, so our business is events, and Michael's my husband. We're in events. We live in New York City. Good thing we don't own a cruise ship, because otherwise we would just be, and it'd be really easy to think that everybody is living my life, but they're not. Like, I have friends who are now busier than ever with their work, who are getting promoted right now because their companies need their talents and expertise now more than ever. Okay, so I posted yesterday on my Instagram, some of you would have seen it, a picture of me working in my bed. It was a little joke I made. I decided to work remotely, and instead of working at my desk, which you can see right here, I worked on my bed. So that was my working experience. But in the picture, there was a desk, a bed desk. And I had all these people asking about this Lucite bed desk. You can see it in the comments. I got all of these questions in my DMs. People, and Lucite anything isn't cheap. And they were asking you'd be shocked at how many people are asking me where I got a certain sweatshirt or a sweater. And they know, like, they aren't, and people are buying. Just the story behind the desk is it was supposed to be a shelf, but it got delivered. It had, it was supposed to be like a Lucite box shelf, but it came broken. So the bottom of the box had fallen out. Like, it wasn't, so it was just a desk. So now it's a desk. Like, you can't buy it unless you want to buy it for Crate and Barrel and it's broken. So people are still buying. Don't write other people's stories for them. Okay? Like, you don't get to choose that story. All you get to do is tell yours and have those who want your story get on board. All right. So that being said, what I want to do is break down just a little bit. I want to break down a little bit like a method for finding your stories right now, the stories that can matter so much. And Julie, this is what you and I talked about. We talked about on a previous call, because right now, just posting a picture of your Shakeology, not going to work. All right. Just posting you shaking your Energize, not going to do much good right now or ever. Okay. Now I will say, posting stories on social media, like using stories in your social media, using stories in your communication, does take additional work. Julie said, like, oh, sometimes I read her posts and I'm like, oh my gosh, how did you even make that happen? Sometimes you probably read my post and you're like, wow, Kindra, you really phoned that in. Because I can't always write a story. Like, sometimes I don't feel like it. It's my mood. It's the time. Whatever. But I will say, when I do post stories is when I see the best results. So I'll be honest with you right there. That's how it plays out. And sometimes you're not going to be in the mood to tell a story, but know that you're not going to get the best results. You got to own that choice and then tell a story when you can. So here's a few places, or here's a few ways that right now in this moment, you can be using your stories, because just a picture of the product isn't going to help. What will help is putting your product in life's stories right now. So think about the products that you have. You have all the different products. Okay. You have energy. I can list off a few right here. You have Energize, you have Shakeology, you have the collagen, right? You have the products of the workouts. How many of you, like, when this all went down, I was like, oh my gosh, I can't believe Beachbody right now. Like, people are not allowed to go places and work out. And you have, like, wow, like what? And people can't just like go out and run, right? Because that hurts. Even if you feel comfortable going outside, like how perfectly positioned you are for health and wellness products. So you have your various products, you have the workouts. Another product you have is a sense of community. How many of you have watched people? So think about all your friends who are, because I think one of the big things that is happening right now is loneliness. I've heard from several of my strong, beautiful, powerful girlfriends that have said, I think I'm actually struggling with depression right now, right? Like, that is because why? Because we've lost our sense of community. And if any of us have ever underestimated that, which I know you haven't, part of the reason, one of the biggest benefits, like, you could have all the product benefits, but one of the biggest benefits of being a coach and of building this business is this community. Like that you can get your cup filled up by tuning into a Zoom. Like, this is something you've been doing for a long time, right? So think about, like, that is a product that you sell, that everybody's trying to figure out right now. And people are just getting to that point. Like, how many of you have had to have a virtual birthday party for yourself or a kid? Like, that's part of the reason that screens have become a part of our lives and our home right now, is because that is how my kids get to see their friends. That's how they don't feel lonely. So it's another thing that you offer. And I haven't even touched on the additional income that a lot of people are going to be more open to right now. Notoriously, within this industry, I picture it like when you're playing a board game, like you're playing Monopoly, right? You set all the pieces up and maybe you have to like leave it. Did you ever do this when you were a kid and you were playing a board game with your brothers? Maybe not. Maybe you weren't a cheater like me. You'd be playing a board game and you'd have to like pause because you had to like go eat lunch or something. And I would always just go like this. Whoop! If I was leaving, if I was losing, just like scatter the pieces all over again. And then, nope, that's what's happened right here. Someone, somewhere, somehow the universe has taken our game board and gone like this. Whoop. And the things where we all thought, different people thought they had all the pieces in place, they're all scattered all over, and they're open to new ways of putting those pieces back on the board. And that's where your opportunity comes in. They're open to it right now. So here's what I want you to do. Okay, I have 3 minutes left. Julie, I don't even know. This is how it goes. Like, so don't worry. We're good. This is exactly what I wanted to leave you. This is exactly what I wanted to teach you. And I had backup in case on the off chance I didn't have enough to say. When am I going to learn that I always have enough to say? Okay, so here's what I want you to do. I listed off a few of the products that you have, and you know more of the products. I want you to list them. I want you to list the products, and I want you to make a list of the benefits that you would typically talk about. Like, oh my gosh, I have the energy to work out right now. Comes from Energize. Or, oh my gosh, my hair, I shouldn't say this, and I haven't said this out loud anywhere, but collagen works so well that as soon as this happened, I stopped taking it because I couldn't have my hair grow out that fast. That was the first, I know I shouldn't say it because I sound, but even that is a story of how good the product is. Like I stopped taking it because I'm like, I need to slow the grow, okay? Which you would never say that I had to stop it because I'm like, I know I've got like 3 months before I get to go have this taken care of, and I can't have that accelerator on there. So, okay. So think about the products that you have and the results that you would typically think about, that you would say. Now, collagen isn't going to be a good example, or maybe it is for you. Like maybe you're like, now is the time. Yeah, maybe you don't color your hair. And you're like, oh, I want you to think about each of those products, the community, whatever. And then I want you, because this is where it usually stops. Like, oh, I'm so glad I have the energy to work out. Okay, good for you. I want you to take it one step further. And I want you to choose one particular moment during this time where you were like, thank goodness. Thank goodness for this. And then I want you to tell the story of that moment. So I have one of those moments. I think we've all kind of gone through, different, it's been a roller coaster, right? And you have sometimes it's a week where you feel really good, or sometimes it's a day where you feel really good. And I've just learned, have you had that where all of a sudden one day you're like, oh my gosh, I thought I had this under control, but this sucks so bad for whatever the reasons are, you get whatever it is. And I, at the beginning, or somewhere in the early beginning, or the middle beginning of this, I just kind of didn't want to work out. I just didn't. And that went for a while, actually. Like I went, and which isn't normal for me. Exercise is for my body, yes, but it's also, I've learned over time, very important for my mind. It's my medicine in that way. And I've learned that lesson the hard way, but I just didn't care. I just didn't work out. And that compounded over the course of whatever 1 week, 2 weeks it was, until I just really didn't even feel like myself anymore. I just didn't even recognize myself. I just felt like someone else, and someone I didn't really like. And I knew in my head kind of like, I probably just need to go work out. I just need to make that happen. But I couldn't get my body out of bed. And so actually I had I'm like, Michael, can you make me an Energize? I hadn't had one in a while. And he did. He like mixed one up for me, and I drank it. And I was like, maybe I'll put on my shoes. So I put on my shoes. I'm like, maybe I'll just walk out the door. So I went down, I walked out the door, I walked out onto the sidewalk, and I'm like, maybe I'll just go for a walk, and if I feel like running, I'll run. And so I started walking, and then I started running, and then it was 3 miles later, and I started to feel like myself again. Okay, So that's a story about energize. But it's so much more than, oh, I have the energy to work out right now. That's a story about feeling like myself again. And let me tell you, and you don't have to tell my story. Don't tell my story. Tell yours, right? Can you think about those moments? Or maybe it was a night where you just like weren't feeling, you just were done. Like and you had one of these team Zooms and you sat on it and you were like, I feel connected. Tell that story. And in Stories That Stick, I talk about the framework for a story as being normal, explosion, new normal. So let's break that down just for a minute. If you were talking about like the story that you want to tell about being about this community, okay, you wouldn't just say, oh, I'm so happy I got on my team Zoom tonight. My cup is filled. I'm so glad I have this opportunity to meet with all these strong, passionate people that I love. Because anybody reading that is going to be like, good for you. Okay. Right? So the problem there is you started with the explosion, which is tuning into your team call. And then you went to the new normal, which is now I feel so much better. But what happens is we leave out the beginning of the story, which is the normal, which is how you felt, what you were thinking, what was happening before you got on that team call. Were you feeling overwhelmed? Were you feeling disconnected? Were you feeling empty? And you can add in there some of the specific details. Like maybe you were making dinner and you were just like, or maybe you were supposed to make dinner and you were like, you know where the cereal is to your family, you know, like what did that look like? And then you decided like, okay, I just need to get on the call. Now, when someone hears that story and they're sitting in their normal of having that same kind of night of like, I just don't wanna, I feel I miss my friends, I miss my normal life. When you're telling that part of the story, and it doesn't need to go on forever, but they can see themselves there and they see themselves. And that's what people want. That's what your prospective team members want. That's what your prospective coaches want, your team members want, is they want to feel seen. You can make them feel seen when you tell stories that they are in and they don't even know it. Like your story becomes their story. So when you're normal and they talk about amazing felt to be on the team call and now your cup is filled, they can go with you all the way through that story. So make a list of the products, make a list of the surface results. Then in other times, maybe you could get away with telling. I had one with Shakeology when they were talking about a lockdown in New York City right at the beginning of this, and like go to the grocery store and get all your food. And oh my gosh, but you can't stock up in New York City. There isn't room. Like my kitchen is this big. Like where am I supposed to put it all? And I've already got the toilet paper. Like there just wasn't. And then I looked and I had stocked up big time on pumpkin spice Shakeology and the peppermint mocha Shakeology. And I was like, oh, well, I'm good. Like those things take up no space. And I have, if worse comes to worse, and there really is like a huge food shortage, I've got 2 weeks of great nutrition that I can feed myself and my family. Like that feeling of like relief now that isn't the story. I could build out that story to really make you feel it and everything, but do you see that? Okay, so take the products, take the results, and then think about a moment in the past 2 weeks, in the past month, where that has really made a difference in your life, and tell that story. Whew, okay, Julie, I'm going to hand it over to you. And the good news is I won't take up much more of your time. It's sunny for the first time here in like a week. So
I'm laughing at your comment though, just because someone asked me to speak on their team page yesterday. She's like, just like 5 minutes. 40 minutes later, I get off. And I'm like, you know, when I had a lot to say. There was a lot of stuff to say. It just is what it is. when you're passionate. I would love them to have just a few minutes to ask you some questions, if that's okay. And I know a couple of them had some in the chat, but if you've got a question that you are going to exercise your bravery and unmute yourself to ask Kindra, please do so. We've got just a couple minutes where you could ask her, this best-selling author speaker who is going to be on the main stage at Summit. You actually can ask her your question in person. Does anyone have one?
Here. I'm putting this link in the chat too, to get the ebook that has the worksheet to work through that story thing that I said.
Perfect.
I have a question.
Go ahead.
Can you hear me? This is Connie Canatano. How are you guys?
Good.
Hi, Kendra.
Hi, Connie.
My question is this. When you are going back and forth with potential customers or coaches on Instagram or Facebook and Threads, how do you break into asking somebody more personal questions about their story without feeling like you're pushing your I feel like some people back away. They're afraid to engage. They're afraid that maybe you're not, even though they see you online, maybe they're like, I don't know. But how do you really get them to talk about this story, their purpose, what they want in life?
Oh, Connie, that is such an excellent question. And this is a great question. Here's something that I want, because you need to remember that for some people, you're the one that they're nervous. Like, you're the star. You're the one that they're nervous to talk. They've seen your life and your journey play out. So here's what I would recommend. To remember that story begets story. So Connie, I love your instinct right here that what you really want from someone is not their litany of what they're looking for and bullet point lists from them. You really want their story, because that way you can better tailor and coach their experience. But you can't say to someone, so tell me your story. That is the creepiest thing. I mean, it's so intimidating too, because like if I were to say to you, like Kimberly, if I were to be like, Kimberly, what's your story? You'd be like, I don't know. What do you want me to say? So here's the thing to remember. Story begets story. If you want to know someone else's story, tell a little of your story to them in those threads. Say, maybe they say, oh, I'm thinking about this. They give you a little clue and say, oh my gosh, I know exactly what you're saying. And then type just a very short story, like, last September, this, and this happened to me. Or, oh, I had a coach on my team who this, and this, and just tell a little snippet of their story. Make sure to include the emotions in it, because it gives you, and what you're doing when you do that is you're demonstrating for them, that this is a safe place. That by you sharing more story, that it's okay for them to share their story back. Have you ever been in that situation where you're like, and you don't really, we wouldn't think about it in that way, but I had an old mentor of mine, and he was a storytelling mentor, but he was also like a friend and a mentor, and we were talking about like dating or whatever, and he was like, you'll know it's good when you share a story at the new boyfriend's family dinner and they start sharing stories back with you. When you start getting into that story exchange is where it really happens. But for them to know that that's okay, you have to show that to them. And you can't just say it, you have to show it. So just keep giving them little bits of story, which will guide their response to share a story in return.
I had a question about, I love that was something that shaped you when you were a little girl, because I really believe that those gifts, like if we're being true to ourselves, it's probably something when we were a kid that really shaped who we're going to be now. So I just love that. I wanted to ask, I think that people love Facebook or love Instagram stories, and they love that because they see the person and you're telling a story. So how would you suggest doing that maybe on our page or on our feed without it taking do you think that the power of storytelling can also be even more powerful when it's you talking and just saying, oh my gosh, this morning? And I know that it's acceptable on stories. But do you think that we could sort of evolve that where we had like a 3-minute story on our actual feed?
Yeah. So like a 3-minute written story. Is that what you're?
No, like we just go live for 3 minutes and we tell a story. Like, would that be awkward, like in a feed? And I know, Julie, I know you're an English teacher too. So like just I love stories and I love watching stories. And I probably, like, I watch Julie's story because I love her presentation. I love the way she looks, like you really feel it. So I just wondered if you thought as a storyteller, if that's in the future, because we love stories so much, how could we then integrate that onto our feed? Does that make sense?
Yep.
I'm asking more if you think that is how it'll evolve, or could we make it that way?
Yeah, no, I really think that, so here's the thing, there's a lot of discussion, argument, back and forth about the human's attention span. And we have so many things, right? And we're constantly scrolling, we're doing all these things. But one thing we know for sure is that humans, our brains are naturally drawn to stories. When you're telling a story and you're doing it the right, like you're telling an actual story about it, like that has that normal explosion, new normal, people will tune into that. Like they won't be able to, it's not a matter of trying to get someone's attention when you're telling a story, no matter what medium you're doing it, no matter if it's in a caption, no matter if it's a 3-minute story, no matter if it's a 3-minute story that happens in 15-second increments on your Instagram stories. Our brains want to know and want to participate in the creation and the conclusion of that story. So absolutely. And beyond that, when you do this consistently, when our brains are saying, I want a story, I'm craving a story, that will drive people. If you've been doing, like, people now come to my page, that my page has grown organically and slowly, just like anyone's, but people keep coming back because they now know me as the storyteller. And when their brains are craving that they know where to get it. So that consistency, so you might not see results instantly, but you need to train your followers and the people who find you that this is what they can come to expect from you, and they will come back to get it. So yeah, no matter what format it takes, and again, it'll take practice. But yeah, there's definitely a place for a story.
Kindra Hall, you're amazing.
So fun.
You're so great. And I know that you're doing so Kindra mentioned we were supposed to be together in New York City today because I was doing her live storytelling workshop. So that's going to be rescheduled. She will have more of those. So, really follow Kindra, get on her website, get on that mailing list so that as she's doing more of these live experiences, you can dig in and learn more about storytelling, because truly it doesn't matter what business you're in. That's what we do. But here in this business, we do that better and more than anybody else. There's no better story than the story of a transformation, physically and mentally. And that's the heart of what we do. And if we're not telling those stories, both our own and others, we're doing people a disservice who are out there waiting for that story that can change their life. They're waiting for that story that connects with them, that will cause that transformation. And if we're not telling it, we're doing them a disservice. So if you are looking for those pieces that will help you level up your storytelling skills, her book, her website, her tools, her live stuff, get in it. Be here for it. Do all the things, because it will help you be better.
Do it.
For sure.
And take your Energize.
And take your Energize, for sure. For sure.
Julie,
you're so great.
Thank you. I'm going to go outside in the sun. That's what's going to happen. We're going to do it. It's happening. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.